Well, well, well. What do we have here? That's a lot of jump packs. Some of them have air compressors, some of them don't. Let's check them out. We've got Topdon, Nexpow, Noco. We got some Lokithor. Who wants to know more about these? So like I said, I've got more jump packs than I know what to do with right here. It's funny how this all came about because I've had noco jump packs for probably the last year and a half. It all started, I bought this 1000 amp pack. It's a, what is that thing? GB40. I bought that because of its size. It's tiny, and I was going on a motorcycle trip, and it seemed like a good thing to have. So I liked it because it was compact. Then obviously it's not that great at jump starting a truck or a diesel or something like that, and that's pretty much what I work on. So I said, well, that's cool for the bike. Let me buy a bigger noco, and I got this 2000 amp GB70. So these have been very good as far as I'm concerned. I've had no complaints about them. Some people I know aren't a big fan of the nocos. Sometimes you got to do like funny button presses to get full power out of them, or they will recognize that your battery's too dead and they won't do anything. So that was all fine and dandy. And then I also own a portable inflator, and I was like, man, it'd be really awesome if someone just came out with an inflator jump pack, because that would solve all my problems. And if I was going on a long trip on the bike, I was like, if the form factor's small enough, that would be the way that I would go. I would consolidate two things into one and just bring one thing. So enter the Topdon, the 2200 Air, V2200 Air? Yeah, V2200 Air. I saw that thing popping around all over Instagram and Facebook, and I was like, that's the thing that I've been looking for. Obviously, the form factor of this compared to a 1000 amp jump pack, this is substantially bigger. So, you know, this is still, this and my portable air compressor, or my portable, you know, my air pump will take up less space than this. But this is all complete, all one unit. So that's cool. So when I went to SEMA a couple months ago, a month ago, something like that. Time flies. When I went to SEMA, I talked to the Topdon guys, and I ended up leaving SEMA buying a V2200 Air. So this is a pretty cool setup. This stemmed over to these three though. So also while I was at SEMA, I stopped and talked to the guys at Lokithor, which as soon as I started looking up this Topdon and doing some research on it, obviously whoever's watching the cell phone, the FBI or whatnot, told me, hey, you might want to check out Lokithor. So I chatted the ear off of Joe over there at Lokithor, and these are what I came up with here. And then also, there's this nexpow, which these three do not have air compressors. These three do have air compressors. And I kind of wanted another option to compare. So I went ahead and grabbed this nexpow off of Amazon. Basically, I watched Project Farm's jump pack shootout, basically. Some of them had air compressors, some of them didn't. I was actually surprised at how many jump packs do have air compressors in them now, which is pretty cool, because if you think about it, that's a dead battery or a flat tire is like pretty high up there in the realm of things that is going to happen to your vehicle at some point in time. So this was very affordable, but still performed well on Project Farm's list of jump pack air compressors. So I wanted to give this one a check out too. So going down the line, V2200 Air, that one is 2200 amps, obviously. This nexpow, this thing is 4000 amps. So this is actually a heck of a jump starter, and that's kind of what Project Farm and his testing showed, is for the price point of this, it's actually a very good unit. And then you'll notice this Lokithor, this is an AW401. So it comes in this giant box, and the one thing that you'll notice about this one specifically is it's bigger than everything else on the table. Even this 4000 amp jump pack. Now, you might be curious why that is, and because this actually has a water pump built into it as well. So not only is this one a jump pack, but it has an air compressor and a water pump. Now, a lot of people would be like, that's kind of the dumbest thing I've ever heard of. But in all reality, I can't tell you how many times having something like that on our big rig would have been handy. So obviously this is kind of in a realm of its own, and this is only a 2500 amp jump starter. So more than the topdon, but less than this nexpow. And I'll get to like kind of the other things that this could be handy for a little bit later in the video. But that is the only one that has a hose basically on it. So inside this box there's actually a hose nozzle and two water hoses, one to run to your source of water and one to run the pressure side out of. But Lokithor was kind enough to send me these two. What we do is we will race in King of the Hammers and Ultra 4 racing. So it's pretty helpful to have a jump pack on the race Jeep in the race, and that way if your alternator craps out and it takes your battery out, or your battery goes bad, or you lose a cell in the battery or something stupid like that, which has absolutely happened to us before, you should be able to limp yourself back to the pit at least to fix or hopefully diagnose the problem and continue racing. If you're just dead in the water and you can't get the car out of its own way, you're not only a trail plug or a race plug in that instance, but your day's done. So I've strapped this noco into the roll cage before. This is only a 2000 amp, and this J402 Pro from Lokithor, this sucker right here is a 3500 amp jump starter. This does not have an air compressor, but this will, well, obviously it's a very similar size, form factor wise, to my 2000 amp noco. So when you're talking having a dead battery, a dead alternator, you're only going to get so far off of powering your vehicle with a jump pack, and you might still be stranded. You might get further, but you might still be stranded with 2000 amps. I don't know. It all depends. In my mind, I wanted the most amps I could get in the smallest package, so you have the best chance of it taking you back to the pits if it needs to. And that's where that lokithor came in play. So pretty much, I'm not really going to talk about these nocos much, because a lot of people are familiar with the nocos. The kind of new players, I guess you could say, is these four. So I basically explained the idea behind this lokithor jump pack. Simply the fact that it's the same form factor as many other smaller amperage jump packs is my selling point on this one. That's awesome. And so the one thing that I do like about the noco is the nocos that I do have, and I don't know if they're all this way, but the 1000 amp, it has a very small plug that goes into the jump pack itself for the clamps. You'll notice over here you've got these giant plastic contraptions on the end of the clamps. So I don't like this style as much as I like the noco, and actually I was very pleased to see that the lokithor has a very similar style plug, as in it's not a giant box. So whatever they're doing in this box on these two, I'm assuming that they are doing inside of the jump pack itself with these brands. I don't like these because it's just cheap plastic. It's a huge amount of weight and leverage hanging off of a bunch of plastic pieces. And let's be honest, like, these are all probably made overseas. I don't think any of them are USA made or anything like that. I don't even know if that exists in the jump pack world. But especially like a $77 jump pack, it's cheap. It's cheaply made, you know? So I don't like to have a ton of this dangling off of two plastic little connections into the jump pack, because I see this as a failure point. Whereas if you have the bare minimum amount of weight and leverage hanging off of where you plug these cables into the pack, that should, in sense, in my mind at least, last longer, have a lot more longevity to it. So I can tell you right out of the box, like, this style I'm not thrilled with. Nothing to do with a performance aspect or anything, but it's just the fact that I see that as a failure point, and a sooner failure point than this style. So that right there, this thing, I'm not even sure if they've released this yet. I couldn't find it on their website when they sent it to me. So this might be a new product. Now, I've spent a lot of time, I haven't talked to anybody from these companies, noco or nexpow, obviously. But I spent a lot of time, I talked to, I don't remember the gentleman's name, at Topdon. Got a lot of good information from those guys. And I spent a lot of time talking to the gentleman over at Lokithor, and I can tell you that this right here is very appealing to me, and the things that they've mentioned that they're in the works with. So obviously this tiny little jump pack, this noco that I said I like to take on motorcycle trips. So when we were talking at SEMA, the gentleman from Lokithor mentioned that they're actually in works of a motorcycle specific or power sports specific, let's say, jump pack. So it's most likely going to be a smaller amperage because it's a smaller motor to turn over. And the one cool thing that he mentioned is these clamps are big and bulky if you're talking about a motorcycle and where they stick motorcycle batteries. But a lot of motorcycles out there have some sort of trickle charger or battery tender hooked to the battery, so when they sit, they can charge the battery. He had mentioned that whatever this product may be, they want to integrate it into that 2-wire trickle charger plug. And if anybody's familiar with trickle chargers or motorcycles or anything like that, you know exactly the 2-wire plug that I'm talking about. So that would be awesome because you would not only get rid of the giant bulky cables and clamps, so it would take up less space, but also you no longer have to fight to get a clamp into a place that it doesn't want to fit. So I thought that was one of the coolest things that I heard so far about what Lokithor has got in mind for new products. So that being said, this jump pack, like I was saying, 3,500 amps. This is absolutely going to go in our race Jeep, and this will get strapped to the cage somewhere. And this, I think, is going to give us our best shot out of any jump packs that I own currently to get the car back to the pits if the need be, or start the car with a completely dead battery. You winch for miles and miles and hundreds of times throughout the race even. So all that stuff wears on your alternator and your battery, and the chances are high that you will have some sort of electrical issue, and this may just make or break the race. So jumping over to this one now, I like this one, that one, whatever. I like the form factor of this air compressor jump pack, this topdon, better than I like the form factor of this Lokithor. But they each have their place. Lokithor actually does make, I believe, 2 different models of jump packs with air compressors that do not have the water pump. And I would like to get my hands on one of those to see more direct comparison. But from what I remember looking at them at SEMA, they are much more similar to this size and this form factor of jump pack. So the reason why I like this one is because a lot of times when we are out racing or we are at a show or an event, we will need a jump pack, an air compressor, and having a water pump is actually a pretty awesome idea. The fact that we are usually out in the middle of the desert, or Johnson Valley, California, down in the Hammers, or we might be in Moab, Utah, or Wolf's Caves, somewhere, anywhere. Most of these places that we go are remote, so there isn't a lot of amenities. You can't just take your vehicle to the car wash and wash it. So some of these vehicles that we're bringing into these remote places are our show vehicles. So not only do you want it to perform well in the dirt and the desert and the mud, whatever you're in, the rocks, but you also want it to look the part of a showstopper. So we've been on photo shoots before in desolate areas, and as soon as you pull the vehicle out, it's covered in dust. As soon as you drive it to where you're going to shoot the vehicle, it's filthy. It would actually be pretty cool to be able to get to your destination in the middle of nowhere and spray your vehicle off. You know, if there's a stream or a creek or a river or a lake, you could basically, if you have onboard water, you could put the hose from this into it and you could wash your vehicle. That's pretty cool. From the semi-truck standpoint, like sometimes you want the truck and trailer to be clean. You have onboard water. I don't normally carry a hose with me, and it doesn't have a pump per se to hook a hose to wash the vehicle, unless you're hooked to maybe unless you're hooked to a land hookup, like an RV hookup. We also deal a lot in the overlanding community where you might be off the grid for weeks at a time. You might not have running water. Just the fact that you can pump water through this thing is pretty brilliant. Like, that's awesome. So this right here is going to go into probably our big rig, and it will pump up any tires that we have, because I believe this thing, if I remember correctly, goes to 150 psi maybe. Yep, 10 to 150 psi. So technically speaking, and I am a bit skeptical, this would fill our Freightliner Renegade tire. 150 psi is a lot. So I am definitely going to be curious if I put this to the test, if it will actually pump that high. But one thing you'll notice on this one, and I believe it's very similar with all their other air compressor jump packs, is the hose for the air compressor part is separate. So there is a bunch of bags and a bunch of hoses in here. So this is actually, it's not a very compact and easy way to carry it. And that's kind of the downside to it. Even the smaller ones that don't have the water pump, this stuff is still loose. So that doesn't thrill me. The other thing is the nocos are the only ones that I've found so far that have cases for them. Maybe they don't come with them, but you can buy a case for it. So I couldn't find anywhere on Topdon's site to have a case for this one. This one's just massive. This one is in front of its case, so that's pretty cool. And the things like the nexpow also has a detachable air hose. So, you know, it is this big behemoth of a thing, and you still have an air hose in here, and you still have the jumper cable. So it's a relatively big bag. This is not, it's more convenient than multiple bags, but it's also pretty cumbersome. So it depends on what you're doing. Now, I actually bought this for a gift because my mother actually lives in places that gets hurricanes. So oftentimes they'll have to evacuate, and sometimes they won't have power for days on end, depending on how the storm rolls through. So this one here, I thought, being that you can indeed charge, you know, USB-C out of pretty much all of these, I thought this would be awesome because it is 4,000 amps. So I believe that battery is going to be more powerful than the rest of them. So I feel like that's probably an awesome thing, that if she was needing longevity out of a jump pack for, let's say, charging a cell phone for 3 or 4 days, this will probably suffice. It also has the air compressor. It also has the jump pack capability. So this is, for the price point, it's not as streamlined or as sleek as these. It doesn't have a name brand. It doesn't, it's probably much harder to rectify an issue, or you know, even if this does have a warranty on it, it's probably much more difficult to deal with a warranty or something like that. So it's not something that I think I would per se buy for myself, but I think it, judging from Project Farm's testing, it's a pretty legit little power plant for the dollar figure that you spend on it. And then back down the line here to the topdon. Obviously I mentioned kind of how I'm not thrilled about how these blocks are on the cables. One thing that I do notice is the cables on this are substantially smaller than everything else on the table. Even this 1000 amp noco has much thicker cables. That's 8 gauge, and this topdon is 10 gauge. So everything on this table has a thicker gauge wire than the topdon does. That being said, a lot of these have equal length cables, and I believe that's the same. This nexpow is not equal length, but they are much closer in length than this one is, and I haven't quite yet figured out if that's a good thing or a bad thing, because a lot of times when you have these jump packs, I've noticed that where you set them is often determined by how long, or the position of the battery terminals versus where your jump pack is. So I can see in some instances having a staggered set of leads is actually better, and in some instances it might actually fight you. The one cool thing about these being staggered is whenever you roll these up, they never end in the same position. So any way you slice this, they're kind of overlapping. That almost fits inside of the other one, but the ones that are exact same length, you've now got this block of plastic and metal that, like, you know, it doesn't lay flat. If it does, the cable bunches up. So that's a positive about this, but I definitely didn't realize until I was just looking at it that those cables are that thin compared to everything else on the table. I was very unprepared today. Didn't charge the camera, battery died, and here we are again. So like I was saying, it's pretty funny that a 1000 amp jump pack has a thicker cable than a 2200 amp jump pack. That's definitely a downside to this topdon. Kind of the last thing I want to talk about the topdon though is one thing I absolutely love about this. I would like to see cases for every option available. Maybe not coming with it, but it'd be nice to be able to get it. So that included with the topdon. But one thing the topdon does better than I think anything else on the table as far as an air compressor jump pack is the fact that when you got this in your hand, you have everything. You have the hose, you have all the little adapter pieces for like filling up your, I can't open it with my finger, but for filling up like a volleyball or a basketball or a football or something. The hose is coiled up, clipped right into it. This is one piece. There's no threading it in. There's no possibility that you're going to lose the hose. As far as like, this just tickles my fancy as far as how it's laid out, how it's thought out. That's killer right there. So like, this is awesome. I would probably be fine with a jump pack air compressor that has a hose for the air compressor part that detaches. But when you don't have a case or something that fits it all in there, it would be very easy. That could roll around your trunk. It could fall behind a seat. Like, you might not be able to find it when you need it. This, always there, always gonna be there. So, yeah, they've all got input and output ports, USB-C and USB-A. The topdon has a pretty cool display on it. This nexpow, kind of basic but more buttons. They all have lights. This sucker, this thing's got ports all over it. It's got water port over here. It's got your air port over there. Front port for the water. You've got the jump pack port, the in and out, and then you've got your USBs. This has a ton of buttons, a ton of options. Nice bright, well laid out display. You've got this thing right here, where it's got a lot of like warning lights, basically, I guess you would say. You know, this thing is, I believe, it's rated for an insane degree of cold. Like it's good in a cold environment is what I'm trying to say. I'll have to look up. I'll put down on the screen below what it's good to, but I think it's like -40 or something like that. So I will say I tried jumping my motorcycle with this little thing the other day. I never put it away for the winter. It started snowing out. It had a cover on, blah blah blah. So it's cold, hasn't been started in a month, 2 months, something like that. This has been sitting in my car in the back in the cold for the last 5-6 months. This wouldn't start my bike the other day. I wonder if it was something to do with the cold. But this one is supposed to be rated to a extremely low temperature. So I've bought a lot of these. I've gotten some for free. That's just kind of my run through with them. I like the fact that companies are including other things other than just a jump pack with a jump pack, because it becomes more of a multi-tool. But when you do that, are you sacrificing size and the ability to easily store this thing in your vehicle, or always have all of the pieces to it, or is there something that's just to be said about the simplicity of this is a jump pack, this jumps your vehicle, that's what it does. So that's kind of my take on a bunch of different jump packs, and I'll probably do some sort of review video after a bunch of months, and I have all of these in my disposal for quite some time, so I've jumped plenty of things with those. We're going to KOH in the end of January, so about a month. This thing will probably be going. These two might just daily drive them in my car or around the shop type thing, see how they work. One thing I can say that I did not hit on is, although the hose is captured in the back of this, and I love that aspect of it, this air hose seems to be very hard to take off of a valve stem. And I've tried the Nexpow's air hose, and I've tried the Lokithor's air hose, and they are both much easier to remove from the valve stem. This thing I found when I pumped the tires in my car up not that long ago. It kind of like, it latches on real good, it presses on real tight, and then you go to unlatch it and pull it off, and you really struggle to get it off the valve stem. Both of these were much more seamless. You just unlatch it and off it comes. I would assume that for sake of product simplicity and money reasons, that Lokithor probably uses the exact same air hose for every air compressor that they have, with every jump pack air compressor that they have. It would only make sense in my mind. So I will try to confirm that, and I'll put it down in the video there. But if that's the case, then this hose would be the same hose you get in their 2,000 amp air compressor jump pack without the water pump, and I think it's a 2200 or 2400 amp without the air compressor. So that should go for, I would think, all of the entire line. So the only other thing I didn't touch on is kind of the clamps and how they feel. The nocos, I do like the way the nocos feel. They're real smooth, but you will see I've broken the plastic off of pretty much all of these. So they're not as durable, I guess. Obviously, I have not used, as far as jumping numerous vehicles over time, any of these other ones, but I can tell you that these two, even though they're both Lokithor, these two clamps are different. This one with the high amp output, this actually has like 4 sets of teeth in it, as opposed to your standard clamp like everybody else's that just has 1 row of teeth on each side. So they're really trying to get a really good bite out of that thing when they're pumping that many amps through it. And this one being 4,000, and that's kind of what you can tell with the cheaperness of it. I spoke too soon. No, this one actually does it has 2 rows of teeth, 1 on each side of each jaw. Or 2 rows on each side of each jaw. So I think that's going to be more so with the higher amp output jump packs, as they want a lot of contact area. They want a really good bite into that lug. And then these These are probably the most flimsy. Like, these don't have a lot of tension to them. They're real smooth. But as far as clamps go, these are the smallest. Even the 1000 amp noco has larger clamps than these. And these are definitely, they don't have a ton of spring force to them, where those are hard to squeeze. Like, they're gonna put a lot of tension. These are hard to squeeze. Those are pretty easy. These nocos, they've got decent tension to them, but they don't have as good a tension, and obviously they're more used and older. So, but that's kind of my rundown on what's on the table. So hopefully, I don't know, maybe you learned something, maybe you didn't. We'll see how they work in the long run, and I'll report back to you. So later.